Hi, everyone. Welcome to Figuring Out Fabric, where I ask dumb questions and you get smart answers. And I'm really happy to have a friend and a colleague of mine, Shannon Lindsay, on here. And today we're going to be talking about fabric community. Um, Shannon used to work for a nonprofit in the Power BI space. It's got the weirdest acronym, EggPath. Uh,
That's it.
she's been involved with her local DC user group, although I think you moved, right?
I did move, yes,
Yeah.
to a place with no user group, but I guess that means I can start one.
Yeah, right. Or go virtual. Of course, that was more the sourdough starter of the pandemic was everyone started like a virtual conference and very few of them are still around. But lately, you moved to the Fabric community team. And so I think it's going to be interesting to have that conversation for both of us because I know you've got some questions for me, probably because I answered way too many questions on Reddit than is healthy.
No such
But
thing, no such
yeah.
thing.
Uh, Alex Power slides me at 20 once a month, just, we can keep his Reddit running. So why don't we start with just talk about how you got involved with the Fabric community team, what that even means? Do you just have to post a lot on social media or what? You know?
You know, I've been about a year since I've been on the team, so it
Okay.
still feels pretty new, but it felt like a pretty natural kinda transition. I started getting involved in the Power BI community back in the day, 10 years ago now at this point, like, right when it
That's
first
funny.
started.
Yep.
And, that was actually the first real professional community that I was a part of that felt, like, super supportive. I come from, like, the public health and the nonprofit world, and in that world, like, everyone is fighting for the same small amount of resources.
Oh god, it's a knife fight. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
and
I was,
they're
oh, good. I was involved with, local women's center, so that's how I got into, like, some of the nonprofit kinda space, and it's really disappointing sometimes because there's a bunch of, like, women's centers and shelters in the Pittsburgh area, and you would think that they all work together and collaborate because they're trying to help women, and sometimes that's true, and sometimes you're fighting for the same grant and, they knife each other in the back, and it's really disappointing sometimes.
yeah, I mean, I think a lot of industries are probably that way, but, like, what I liked about the data people was that it was just like, "Oh, you have a problem? I know how to solve that. Let me help you solve that." And so, like, Stephanie Bruno, the person who
Elevator
taught me
pitch.
mostly everything I know about data, she and I would just take our computers around to user groups and to conferences and to all these things, and we'd be like, "Hey, we have this problem. Can you help us solve it?"
Well, you both
And then
work together.
eventually Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, no, I was just saying you both work together at, EggPath, right? So that's probably
Yes.
some important context, but go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. So we worked together at that nonprofit, and I was just, like, dabbling in Excel, and I was a public health person. And, like, again, I just never that sense of community within these people who are all trying to solve the same problem just
Yep.
didn't exist, which is so weird. And then I got into this Power BI and now Fabric space, and everybody is just like everyone's trying to figure out the same problems and are super willing to help each other. It's so nice. It's so collaborative. Anyway, so sorry, really long story, very, very long.
Ooh.
As I was getting involved in the community where I was living in Washington, D.C., things just started to like grow and expand. I started creating content. Eventually, I took that content and the skills I had and started doing that at Microsoft. And then one thing led to another. And now I found myself on this Fabric team. So it's been like a really interesting journey because I know your podcast is all about figuring out Fabric. And at
That's right.
the beginning of Fabric, I was working on the team that was creating all the learning materials for Fabric,
Right, yes.
and it was so hard because I was like, "I don't know what this thing is. I don't know what it does, but I'm gonna figure it out, and then I'm gonna teach everyone else." And so,
Yeah.
like, to circle back to community, a lot of it was just, like, trial and error and talking to other people like you who are trying to figure out the same thing, and yeah. So it's been a kind of a fun journey, but this is where I've ended up.
That's awesome. No, I'm very happy for you. Um, so what is, in your mind, what does getting involved in community look like these days because I think a lot of the ways that if you'd asked me 6 or 8 years ago are diminished because of the pandemic, and people finding hobbies or just not getting out of that cycle because um, Stephanie Bruno not only years ago convinced me to help start the Pittsburgh Power BI user group, which is kind of dormant right now, but we're working on it, but somehow convinced me to get the Pittsburgh SQL Saturday going again. And, attendance is half of what it ever used to be.
Oh, really?
And that's what I hear across the board for SQL Saturday. So people don't know they're one day community run training events. Um, same thing with user groups. Like the attendance is very low. Like I think the first we're we're trying to get the SQL user group and the Power BI user group going again. I guess at some point we need to rename it the Fabric user group. But the first meeting of the year we had 6 people, and then we did a second meeting we had 9 people, and 3 of those were us like organizers or people in
Yeah.
charge or whatever.
Yeah.
But with SQL Saturday, um, I forget the numbers. I think we had 100-ish attendees, which is a lot, but Pittsburgh used to get twice that. And so I think a lot of the ways that 8 years ago would have told people to get involved may not be there. A lot of those groups or events didn't come back. So, like, what are you seeing as ways for people to, like, get involved with the community?
It's a good question, and I'll turn it back to you after I give my answer because a lot of what I'm trying to do in this role is to just pick up the signals that the rest of the community is putting down.
Oh,
Like,
sure.
and I guess I'll define what community means to
Yeah.
me. And that's to me personally, it's just everyone who is using these tools and wants to learn and share and interact and contribute. And
Yeah.
like, community is everywhere. It's mostly online from what I'm seeing right now, and part of that is probably because I live in an area that doesn't have a huge active user base. Everyone is
Yeah.
retired where I live. Um, but, like, yeah, community, it's everywhere. So where I'm focused right now is, like, LinkedIn, Reddit, Discord. um, we do have an official Fabric community site, of course, that I work on, so gotta plug that one. But,
Yep.
also, like, people who are starting user groups at their place of work, or they're running their own contests with their classmates, or so it's like it's really all over the place. It's super distributed.
Yeah.
But I guess, like, throwing it back to you and thinking about some of the signals that I'm trying to pick up on, like, where do you find yourself interacting? Is most of it online?
All right. Slight technical error. So let's try again. I'm going to answer your question. Um, so in terms of engaging with the community, I think we're in a really weird spot, and I think it's only going to get weirder the next few years, in part because of AI. So before the pandemic, I used to go to SQL Saturday events. I want to say 6 to 8 times a year.
That's a
Like I was a
lot.
pretty prolific speaker. Yeah. Well, anywhere that I could go within like a 6 hour driving kind of range, I would. And the number of in-person events that I attend now has gone down a lot. And some of that's falling out of it, but some of it is, the way that I stayed sane, stuck in my house was I started painting little miniatures. So like Warhammer kind of stuff. And you pick up other hobbies or you get into other things. Um, but for 2026, I'm actually way, way more interested in attending conferences than I ever have been. I think this is when we're legally obligated to promote FabCon and SequelCon, which I've submitted for. But, there's like SQL Bits. I wish I was at Past Summit right now, but um, because there's so many people I used to have a connection with that I don't see online at all. And I not only I miss them, but I realize that in my career, a lot of my value as a consultant, like a third of my billable rate is my network
Yeah.
because I don't get paid to know the answers. I get paid to find the answers. And something I mean, because you had a good relationship with Steph, but what a lot of people may not realize is there's plenty of times where I have no idea what the heck I'm doing, and I will DM say if I have a notebook problem, I'll DM Sandeep
Mhm.
Pawar and be like, "How the heck does this work?" Right? And one time I found a bug in MS Note Facebook utils, and I felt very proud of myself. Um, and then he sent it back to the product team. Um, so I think that I'm less engaged with the physical aspect, but I value it more and more. And so I'm hoping next year to attend like 3 or 4 conferences if I can manage to do it. Online, um, like I said, it's getting weird because there's so much more slop. There's so much more noise. And I think there's going to be a move towards curated spaces. That's honestly one of the reasons why I answer so many questions on Reddit is it has a downvote function. And so the community there is self-policing. Now,
Mm.
sometimes they can be a little toxic. I think Alex does a good job of trying to
Reddit's
keep it to.
tough.
Yeah. Oh, no, no, no. You need a thick skin. I wrote a My lord. I wrote a blog post on uh learning how to use LLMs for data practitioners. It was intended to be like an both kind of a vibe check of like, here's how I feel. So it was a little bit rambly, fine. It was pretty long, and I had a bunch of links because I want to be comprehensive. And one of the first comments the person hits me with, how is this any better than just having an LLM summarize it? And I'm like, how do I even respond to this? Now, I ended up having some back and forth and someone else gave some good feedback. And then that original person acknowledged that they had good intention with their comment. They were just kind of blunt. But if you're not ready for someone to just make you question your whole existence for about 15 seconds, maybe don't post on Reddit. So it's kind of the Wild West, right? It's Mad Max out there. But what I appreciate is that, like I said, there's a downvote button and it's self-policing. And sometimes the police will hit you with a club and it's bad. But you have these other spaces like anywhere that has ads,
Mhm.
like LinkedIn, or I guess we're calling it X now, or whatever. Any social media network that has advertisements is motivated to keep you engaged for as long as possible, which means don't leave the network and elicit emotions. So on LinkedIn, they claim this is for security reasons, but a lot of times if I post a comment and then just a link, LinkedIn will eat my link. Same thing can
Yes,
happen sometimes on you.
I have that same problem.
Yeah, I've
That's in on
heard.
purpose?
Yeah, I've heard that, if you have, like, text before and after, it has a better chance, but these days, I'll put in the link and then wait to see if the summary embed pops up. Because if it doesn't, there's a good chance it's gonna get eaten. Again, the rumor is that they do that ostensibly, um, for security because a lot of spammer bots and stuff would just post links, but at the same time, tinfoil
Uh,
hat, if you don't have outbound links, then people don't leave your site. And it is known on social media networks, a lot of times they'll downrank stuff with links. So you'll see all the time on LinkedIn, people will be like, link in the comments. Because, if you have images, if you have video, you get upranked. If you have a link in the main thing, you get downranked because they don't want you to leave the site. And so
I did
a
not
trend
know
that I've
that.
yeah, it's
I mean,
wild.
it makes a lot of sense, but I didn't know
I know. And so a trend I've seen on LinkedIn, I'm sure you've seen it too, is just like all this performative stuff. Like everything is either rage bait to start a fight and get a bunch of comments, or it's the most anodyne, just bland thing that you would never really disagree with, right? Be like, high school never taught me how to run a business. Agree? And then it's like, well, yeah, that's not what it was for. Or like, yes, we sure have clean data models. Like, wow, that's a fortune cookie of a thought there. And so, um, I'm a little bit scattered in terms of social media networks, and I still find some value from that, but I find myself retreating more towards I pay for Feedly. I still read blogs, because I can curate the content.
Mhm.
Um, I get some value out of Blue Sky and X just because there's some people that I wanna engage with as a human being,
Yeah,
but,
everyone's super scattered.
it's the Tower of Babel. right? We've been like, we're all speaking different languages. We're all mad at each other about politics, and we're all just scattered and fragmented. And I just want to find my friends and hang out with them.
Mhm.
So, so I think it's a hard place right now to be.
Yeah, I totally agree. There's 2 things you said there that I wanna dig into. So the
Yeah.
last thing you said, you just wanna find your friends and hang out with them. Like, so this idea of community, obviously, like, we all have an idea of what community means to us in our personal life and our professional life and wherever. But, like, the people who you've met through the Fabric community, Power BI community, SQL community,
Yeah.
whatever, these it sounds to me like these are people, and I'm one of them, I hope, who have become your friends. So, like, I don't know, square that idea of, like, why this professional thing or how it becomes from professional to friendships, and then it goes kinda back to what you were saying about your network. I don't know, talk a
Yeah.
little bit more about that.
Yeah. No, that's fair. So there's an idea that I'm sure you're familiar with, called Dunbar's number. There's
I'm
this
not.
idea. You're not? Okay.
Uh-uh.
So Dunbar's number, it's a rule of thumb, and it's the idea of how many meaningful relationships can one human sustain. And if I remember correctly, the number is about 150. We'll put it in the show notes. But it's a measure of like how many people can you really consider not necessarily a close friend, but the best rule of thumb that I love is if you saw them sitting down at a bar or like an open restaurant or somewhere like a cafeteria, would you feel comfortable just sitting down next to them and chatting? And this has nothing to do with like the introvert extrovert kind of thing. But if you and I were both at FabCon and
Mhm.
I saw you at the lunchroom, I absolutely would plunk myself down. Or if we were at the hotel, I'm sure we've done it.
Yes,
Like the hotel
definitely.
bar. Yeah, no, there's been I remember specifically like you and Steph were working on like some data viz judging competition. I think it was the one for
It
FabCon.
was the world
'Cause
champs, yep.
you were checking for accessibility, and I'm like, "How's it going, ladies? How you doing?" Because we're friends.
Yeah.
And so I think to me, that's kind of the metric in my mind is I wanna find people that I would feel comfortable just plunking myself down beside and chatting with. Um, and some of it is that professional, like, tit for tat kind of thing, for sure, but there's a real sense of personal and professional validation in having the camaraderie. Um, it's
Yeah, I
really, really
agree.
yeah, like, sometimes you just wanna hear someone vent about work or get to do the same. I remember my first few years of going to SQL Setters, I was all about the sessions, I was all about the content, and as I became a speaker, I got more value sitting in the speaker room listening to people talk about their war stories with work and that kind of stuff. And so, um, I think that's valuable, and for people like myself, I'm self-employed. Like, my coworker is my dog Tyson, and he doesn't talk a lot, and he's kind of needy. And so the closest that I get these days to the company Christmas party is, like, past Summit, which unfortunately is happening now, and I'm not attending, just because I forgot the submission deadline, and I took that as a sign my body said, "You need to take a little break, buddy." Um, but, like, as someone self-employed, someone who works remote, like, to me, the closest I get to the company Christmas party is going to conferences and getting to see these people that I've built these professional relationships with.
Yeah. I wanna, like, mirror that a little bit,
Okay.
not related to being self-employed, but actually,
Right.
I had someone reach out to me, like, 2 days ago, and they said, "Thank you so much for doing whatever." I'm running some contest or doing some community thing.
Yeah.
"Thank you so much for doing this. I work at a company, and I'm the only Power BI person, and,
Yep.
like, I have no one to talk to about this.
Yeah.
I don't have anyone to, like, share my excitement, to see how cool this thing is that I did or whatever." So I feel like the community, like, the value of it, it applies to all of us, even if you have a whole entire team at your job, whatever. But I just, like, this is the first professional community that I've been a member of that I feel like so many people, everyone gives and takes, and it's just really communal. It's not like people are in it for themselves or in it to get something out of it or
Yeah. The
It just feels friendly.
my experience with the SQL Server community was the same, where I would describe it as the world's friendliest cult. Like people were just aggressively helpful. Like you would talk to someone at in the hallway track about some issue, and they'd grab someone else who they knew how to address the problem or something like that, and you get used to it. But then I've I've talked to uh, Kelly Potvin Gorman about the Oracle kind of space, and it's because there's a much higher barrier to entry to be an Oracle DBA than maybe there was a SQL Server,
Mhm.
and it's expensive and all this kind of stuff. You get there's less of that, or there's more stratification, where I think one of the things that's been the best for the Power BI and now Fabric community is, like, Chris from accounting is making Power BI reports, and it turns out you're less likely to be elitist and snobbish if you're, on the front lines doing this stuff and coming from the business side. Then, I know some folks who, like, I used to be like this. I used to look down at non-technical kind of people. I've gotten
I
better.
hate that word so, so much.
Sure, that's fair. Sure. Uh,
We could talk about why in a whole other
no, 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 no,
episode.
no. I came in first. Um, but yeah, so I think I've taken it for granted my entire career, and I know there's places where it's just not like that.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so you said one other thing that really caught my ear a
Yeah,
second
yeah.
ago, and I'm hoping that people who are listening will feel the same way. So you mentioned something about when you, like, post your blog and somebody totally pooped all over it,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and it doesn't feel very good. So when I was first getting involved in the community, I was always scared to post things, and this was back in the day where we would, like, post a question on Twitter, and people would just jump in and answer it. But I was always scared that I was gonna look like an idiot or that it was gonna be something, like, super obvious, and so because of that fear, I was scared to even engage, and I mean, I did get over that, of course, clearly,
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
like, I think there are definitely people who hesitate to jump in because they're like, I don't even know what question to ask," or, like, "I don't know how to actively participate." Like, so I'm wondering, do you have advice for people who are, like, on the edges looking in and are like, "I might wanna get involved, but I don't wanna look like an idiot." "I don't understand anything that's being said in this keynote," or,
Yeah,
"I'm just
I think
connecting to Excel, so why would I ask a question?" A million people know how to do that.
so. I think I'll say 2 things, and then, we're kinda getting close to the half hour. So, the first thing is, as a speaker, I love questions. I love them so much because I love knowing that the audience is engaged. I like knowing that what I'm talking about is resonating, and I like getting the warm fuzzies that I'm able to help people. I can tell you as, kind of an effusive, American, uh, whenever I spoke at, I think it was Stockholm Data Saturday, it's one of the weirdest experiences culturally I've ever had, because just no questions, no engagement, and then, later tell people like, "Hey, it was great talking," all that kinda stuff. But, it as someone coming from America where, like, a lot of folks are more than happy to speak their mind. It was kind of a culture shock to be like, "Alright, either this is going great or terrible, and I can't quite tell." But I think as a speaker, it's awesome to be able to help people, to be able to show off our expertise, to be able to know that we're making a difference, all that kind of stuff. Um, I think I understand not wanting to look like an idiot. I think most of the time, though, as long as you're clear about where you're coming from, it's perfectly fine, even if you decide you wanna present. Because y my first presentation was on execution plans, and I probably had some technical errors and all that kinda stuff, and, it can be embarrassing. But, I think some of the best teachers are non-experts.
Yep,
Some of the best
totally.
communicators are non-experts
Mhm.
because they know what the stumbling blocks still are. W s Technical experts are awful educators. That Venn diagram overlap of good educator and deep technical expert is very, very thin. It's very thin because you have to have an immense empathy for the new learner. And, like, for me, like, I make courses, and it's an active practice. Like, I have a little checklist of, okay, what stumbling blocks might be, what concepts might the person not know, all this kind of stuff. And I love watching new speakers because oftentimes, like, they have a spin on things that I wouldn't have thought of because I'm used to whatever the best practices are or whatever. So it can be very valuable and very enlightening to hear from people who are new. And as long as you say, like, hey, this presentation is about what I've learned so far. As long as you're not misrepresenting yourself, I think it's fine. I don't see an issue. I mean, the fear is valid, but
Yeah. I
yeah.
also think that, like, each person's perspective is super valuable. That's why we all blog. That's why we all talk about what we learned and how we learned it. We're all so different. There's got to be somebody out there that can relate to you as a person. And there we go. This circles back to, well, why can't AI just, how's this any different from an AI summary? Okay. Like, hello, it's because it's a human person's perspective on it.
Well, and that was kind of the thing with the blog post is like there were some stylistic things where maybe I could have written it differently or better, but the main thing that I thought was valuable is like another human's lived experiences because you can't get that from a robot aside from
Oh,
if it's quoting other people's blog posts or whatever.
right.
Um,
If it's stealing your content that you already
yeah,
wrote.
right. No, no. Sometimes it'll cite it, but usually, yeah. Um, all right. So gonna wrap up, but any last thoughts you want to share on any of this stuff before we get into the final questions and all that?
No, I mean, I think, like, I just this community has, like, shaped my career in a lot of ways, so I'm super into it,
Yeah.
obviously. But then, like, I see people like you who are out there and doing things, and you're in the Reddit forums, and you're answering people's questions,
Yeah.
and you're on the Slack channel. You're like, I see you everywhere, and so I just wonder, like, or I admire, like, wow, like, that's really you're so involved, and I really admire it, it's really cool. And so I don't know, I wanted to just talk about it and see if we can kinda encourage other people to jump on the bandwagon.
Yeah, I guess two things of encouragement there. So one is, I find sometimes it's helpful to find selfish motivations for selfless acts. And so whenever you teach people, whenever you answer questions, you learn the thing more deeply. Whenever you blog, whenever you make videos, it forces you to learn more deeply. And, with the Reddit questions, I treat it like a Western style shootout. How quickly can I answer that question? And I've seen dividends in my work because I'm helping this customer with a greenfield fabric project. And now I know far too well how to Bing or Google for Microsoft documentation on a question, right?
You just said
Um,
Bing with a straight face.
my default engine's Bing. I figure I might as well understand it, so I use Edge and Bing on my work computer. It's the truth. Um, it's not very good at memes, and lately it's not been giving me Microsoft Docs, so it'll give me random blogs and stuff. But um, I think the other thing though is like the only reason that I put in all this effort to have SQL Saturday Pittsburgh exist, and I'm considering doing the user group stuff, is like for you, it transformed my career. Because if I hadn't attended SQL Saturday, if I hadn't found out about user groups,
Mhm.
then I wouldn't have attended SQL Saturday, and then I wouldn't have gotten cornered by two of the organizers to do my first presentation, and I wouldn't have gotten used to presenting and attending, and then I wouldn't have had Stephanie Bruno convince me to submit to Pass Summit, get rejected, get accepted, do two presentations, and have one be in front of 330 people, the largest I've ever done, and then decide, you know what, shoot, let's try something else that's crazy. Let's submit to be a Pluralsight author, get accepted, become an author, go independent. Like the entire trajectory of my career changed because of some podunk little user group in 2013.
Meaningful little user group.
Yeah. No, and now I help run it. Um, cool. So let's wrap up with just a couple questions.
Sure.
So, um, I don't know if you're allowed to answer this, but I'd like to ask my guests, what is your favorite fabric feature and your least favorite fabric feature? Or do you not do favorites? It's like your kids. You're not allowed to like say which
Oh, no. I mean, favorites is easy. I'm a Power BI girly through and
Sure.
through. I think translytical task flows are super, super cool. It's something that we've wanted in Power BI since basically the beginning, right back in
Yeah.
Power BI. So I'm going with translytical task flows. I don't like the name for the record, but I do like
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
thing itself. Um,
Maybe something
least
that's needs a
favorite.
little bit more baking in the oven, although I know a lot of stuff came out of the oven for Ignite and all that kinda stuff, or, you know,
Yeah,
m
it's
maybe
so
something
hard to
that just
say.
doesn't click. I still haven't learned KQL yet, you know?
Well, did you hear today about the Fabric IQ?
I heard the name. I don't yet know what it is.
Yeah, so I tried to play around with it a little bit last week because we get access in the Microsoft
Yeah.
tenant, and I was so confused. So today when I saw it presented, I was like, maybe this will clear things up for me. Did not. So that's something that I will do more homework on, and maybe we could talk about in a later episode in a couple years.
Alright. I'm gonna put it down as having to learn new fabric stuff is your least favorite feature,
There we
uh,
go.
which is all of us. And then the other question is, like you said, we're scattered to the 7 winds. Where can people find you? Is there anything you wanna promote? We're doing this in the middle of Fabric Data Days, which, just a lot of stuff going on. I know you got, like, a quick viz competition and all that.
Yeah, I'm all over the place, but I think probably the best place to find me is just on LinkedIn. That's where I promote all of the things.
Yep.
And then if I'm speaking at an event, which I also love to do, but do far less frequently these days,
Yeah.
you can find where we are at, Stephanie and myself, at datawitches.com.
Alright. Cool. Well, it was an absolute pleasure to have you on, Shannon. Hope to have you, again sometime once you figure out, what Fabric IQ is.
Maybe you'll be teaching me.
Yeah, yeah, we'll see.
Cool. Okay. Thank you so much, Eugene. And thanks to everybody who's listening. This is cool.